Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the program. Ayesha Vahed, our legal reporter based in the Netherlands. I said The Hague, correction. She has been very visible at The Hague doing coverage and reporting for us. But of course, The Hague is the court and Netherlands is the place where she's based at. And the court, The Hague, is in the Netherlands. Ayesha, assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me as always.
An absolute pleasure. I'm kind of wondering, and I really looked forward to interacting with you over this past while regarding the case at the ICJ, and really, I commend you for the excellent coverage that you were able to provide to us here in South Africa and undoubtedly all around the world. So thank you indeed. And I do hope that our relationship will continue, that from time to time we will be talking with you on legal matters. It may not necessarily be the ICJ hearings, but other such matters. So I look forward to the relationship continuing. I do need to add, you look really very, very tired.
Shukran, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's become part of my morning routine for a bit. And I think it's been a very big task, one that I was not really prepared for, but I tried to do my best in the circumstances. And the court in itself, it's overwhelming. You're suddenly at the World Court, you're having to hear submissions from so many countries. It's a place you never think that you'll be. But inshallah, with everyone's support and dua, I think we've managed to give some coverage to the Palestinian plight and to this case because it's such a big part of history. And I have no doubt that it's part of the end of the occupation of the Palestinian people. And
Inshallah, inshallah.
from time to time.
um, Asha, your life must have changed uh, quite a bit, maybe dramatically, with you doing this coverage at The Hague. Tell us how it's changed and what sort of challenges you faced doing the coverage for us here in here at Salaamedia. And I do know that other mainstream media outlets have also been interviewing you regarding the case at The Hague.
Absolutely. Well, on a personal level, and this is quite strange, but I just said to my parents, I definitely have to learn Arabic because at least three people in the court a day would speak to me in Arabic. And I think that that's a universal language. We don't realize how universal it is in terms of all of the Islamic states and the Islamic countries. Somehow everybody's taken the time to learn Arabic. So in the court, and this includes court officials, this includes the Palestinians, it includes the lawyers making submissions. It was difficult, not to know the language. So that's a personal goal of mine. And then just being on the ground, being in such a huge court, such a formal court. I've, of course, been in court in South Africa before, but it's nothing like that. It's like entering a different world. And I noticed throughout the week that there's Palestinians everywhere. So even while you're there in that case, the crew shooting for TRT actually came from Palestine, and the journalists that I was working closely with came from Palestine. And various people in the court actually have people in Palestine that they lost family. So it becomes such a personal struggle while you're there because you are reporting as an attorney and as a legal reporter, but these people have just lost 30 family members or 50 family members, or they don't know where their nephew is, or their brother's been missing for a few days. And I think that made it very real for me, being able to speak to these people. And I think I've been very fortunate to have that kind of experience. I would have never had the experience of working so closely with Palestinians and feeling the struggle so strongly with them. So on a personal level, that's been one of the biggest challenges and opportunities for me.
And also, Aisha, we do know that I guess it goes back to the time of the war in Syria. There's been almost mass migration from the Middle East, from Syria particularly, to Europe. So it's not surprising that there's so many um, Arab-speaking people in Europe, and where you meet them at every turn. Um, And I guess, with the geopolitics playing out in the Middle East, you are going to have more and more migration from the Middle East to Western countries, and that's a reality the Western countries are going to have to live with and accept, whether they like it or not. They just need to cast their days and their minds to the dark days of colonialism, how they went into Africa and the East to colonize those countries, and how black and brown people had to then just, accept the status quo at the time. And it seems now that the tables are turning, and they're turning because the Western countries still want to control and take a hold of the Middle East and Africa.
Absolutely. And I think that, for example, here in the Netherlands, there are so many Moroccan and Turkish people because Morocco is about an hour and a half away from me. Turkey is 2 hours away from me. And they are third and fourth generation. And what stands out to me is that the Muslims here are unapologetic. They are so strong in their faith, in their dressing, in there's masjids everywhere. I live in a little suburb. I have 3 mosques here, and it's a totally different perception to what you get in South Africa. If anything, before I left to move here, many South Africans had told me, oh, it's going to be so difficult to practice Islam and what's happening in Europe and the West, and you're going to come under a lot of fire for your hijab. And I can say with conviction now that I've lived here for an entire year that the amount of people that are outwardly Muslim here in South Africa, in the Netherlands, is much more than South Africa. And I fear that actually in South Africa, in the corporate environment and things like that, we were losing our identity as Muslims. So it's a totally different world from what I expected. It's been better than my expectations. But you can see that Europe is really being taken over by Islam. The Dutch Muslims are amazing to speak to, and the way they've come into Islam, and you see Dutch women all over on the train, at the mosques, in jilbab, dedicated to the religion. So there's definitely a big move towards Islam and towards Muslims as a whole, and it's been refreshing and surprising to witness.
Alhamdulillah. We're going to go for an ad break, and then we'll focus on rounding up on the case at, the ICJ case. But one more question. We hear from time to time in the media situations of Islamophobia in the West, particularly in France, in Sweden. There's that nut case, that a couple of nut cases that have been going around burning the Holy Quran. And the sense we get here in South Africa is that Islamophobia is on the rise. Is it in fact so, or is it a propaganda by perhaps mainstream media to try and just quell people or stop migration from Muslim countries or majority Muslim countries to the West?
Look, I think in the Netherlands, I can say for sure that I haven't experienced any Islamophobia. And as I said, Muslims are unapologetic here, and the religion is quite respected. But you do have a bit of Islamophobia in Germany. They've made it quite apparent as well now with this entire issue at the ICJ with the aggression in Gaza. They don't want, they don't value sort of Muslim lives the way they do other lives. There is some suppression in the media. I think something with Europe is everybody is forced to respect human rights. So even if they don't want to, they can't openly show you their racism. And those incidents that you have are very isolated. There haven't been that many incidents. When they do have something dramatic happen, it obviously hits the news and mainstream media. But I definitely can't say that there's Islamophobia here on the level that it's portrayed from back home. I experienced it more in South Africa.
Wow. Okay. It's so heartening to hear that. And I just hope that your stay in the Netherlands is going to be truly wonderful in every way. Do you plan on staying there for quite a while? Is that going to be eventually your second home?
I'm not sure. So we tried it out for a year and now we're deciding. I don't think it's for South African. I think with the weather, it's been cold 8 months of the year and just with the language. So I'm learning Dutch, but it's difficult to learn a whole new language now. So I know it's not my permanent home. For now, it's home, but I'm just taking it year by year, inshallah.
Still, it's an amazing experience, is it not? So if and when you do come back to South Africa, you'll come back with amazing memories. Okay, Ayesha, we're going for that ad break, and when we come back, we are going to look at this past week, how it unfolded, and where to from here regarding the case at the ICJ.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Approximately 2/3 of the population of Yemen are in severe need of humanitarian aid. With Ashraful Aid, you can make a difference. For just 700 rands, you can provide a hamper to a family in need. Visit our website today at www.ashrafulaid.org.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
The people of Palestine need your support now. Africa Muslims Agency is on the ground, already providing food, medication, and emergency supplies in Gaza. Donate any amount to Heal Palestine at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Dad, these Frymax chips are so tasty. Wow, that really takes me back. My dad bought me a Frymax chips every day after school. They were my favorite when I was your age as well. Quality is at the very heart of what we do, and that's why we ensure that every Frymax packet is filled with the beautiful goodness and flavor-packed taste that you've come to expect from us since 1982. Frymax, from generation to generation.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salaamedia.
It is exactly 8:25 a.m. news and views on Salaamedia. This, of course, is South African time. We're talking with attorney Ayesha Vahed. She has been our legal reporter at the ICJ hearing. And of course, she's now going to give us a roundup and a wrap up of what has happened in this past week. And of course, the all important question, where to from here? Where to now, knowing that these legal cases take a long time before a verdict will be passed, or resolution, or even a wrap up on the matter. Back to you, Ayesha, and what has happened over the past week.
So much has happened. As you know, it's been over 50 states and 3 organizations that have submitted to the court. But in conclusion, it has been an overwhelming amount of support for Palestine, an overwhelming agreement between states that it is an occupied land, that the occupation needs to end. Nobody is denying that, which is big. And the court has never heard this many states come forward and give submissions We've heard a lot of emotion from the Palestinian people themselves, including the UN representative who broke down in court. We've heard about the humanitarian crisis in Palestine. And then each country has come through and given submission based on their research, based on legal precedents. And we've had a few countries, so the US, the UK, Zambia yesterday, which was very disappointing, and Fiji, who are of the opinion that the court should not render an advisory opinion. And they have said, they've all made a similar argument. And the argument is that there should be negotiation between Israel and Palestine themselves, and that the court should not get involved. But the United Nations asked for this opinion, this advisory opinion. And the reason that it's being asked for is that there is no negotiating with Israel. Israel does not come to the table to negotiate. And if anything, their ministers and their governance has made it clear that the intention is to annex the Palestinian people. And I think that that has been made clear by all the countries as well. Some of the highlights were South Africa, the South African struggle. I think I heard that about 7 times in court, where it was qualified that what the Palestinians are going through is an apartheid. South Africa has also gone through an apartheid, but this is much worse. Then we had certain highlights, like yesterday, for example, Ireland, they've actually started their sanctions officially against Israel.
Yes.
There's been a lot. I don't know if you want me to unpack it country by country.
Please, if you don't mind, for as much as you can, I'll afford you another 10 minutes or so. I hope you're not too tired to go through that. But yes, we'd like to hear as much as you possibly can share with us.
Okay. So we started off with Palestine, and their submissions were largely based on the humanitarian crisis now, what Gaza is going through now. They spoke about the 2 million people that are in despair. They spoke about the children. There was so much of mention made of children and how Palestinian children are seen as snakes. They are dehumanized, about how Israel dehumanizes the Palestinians from the time they are children, so that it is so easy to annex them, to wipe out their culture, to wipe out their hospitals, their schools, because the people in Israel no longer see them as human beings. They also gave us an address on how this court is one of the last hopes for the Palestinians. So Dr. Riyad Mansour spoke about the fact that they are desperate. This is desperation, and they fear that this is the last hope for Palestinians to have their state, for the occupation to end. So basically pleading to the court and pleading with a lot of emotion, and that's how we started off the week. We then heard from South Africa, and South Africa they based their submissions on apartheid, which obviously we know better than anybody else, and our country can speak on that at length. And a lot of other countries took their direction from that, and they requalified that apartheid is completely illegal in terms of international law, that an occupation force cannot decide on the rules and the living conditions of the people that it's occupying. And then we had Saudi Arabia, which has come under a lot of fire, but they gave a very strong submission to the court. They spoke about how Israel is not interested in negotiations. Israel does not see the Palestinian people as human beings. Israel does not want to come to the table, and they've made it clear that the intention is that there will be no Palestinian state. We heard from Bangladesh, who likened the struggle to their own struggle for freedom. And they said that in the case of Bangladesh, 3 million people had to die for it. They don't want to see that happening again. And from a country that has found their self-determination, they feel that it's their obligation and it's part of their constitution to help the Palestinian people and any oppressed people around the world. So Bangladesh's submission was largely due to the fact that we can't watch human rights violations happen in any country and sit back as a collective, as the world, as part of international law, as part of the World Court. Each state has an obligation to come forward when they see a grave injustice. And in this century, it's absolutely unacceptable not to sanction Israel, not to put pressure on Israel to stop the occupation, and not to assist in any way possible. We heard from Algeria, who spoke about the wall and the ICJ ruling in terms of the wall. The wall was ruled as illegal by this very court, and yet that wall stands. and it's an apartheid wall. And Algeria likened that wall to annexation. So they said that the fact that that wall is standing up in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, is a huge demonstration for the world of how the Palestinian people are being, they are basically being isolated from the rest of the world, and they are being annexed systematically. And then we heard from the Netherlands that actually said that all states need to call for a ceasefire and the humanitarian crisis needs to end. We know that in terms of the Netherlands, there's been back and forth because the government was supplying weapons. The people are very much in favor of Palestine. There are these prosecutions here. So the prosecutions in terms of the arms, which can no longer go to Israel. And then the individual prosecutions in terms of IDF soldiers, which I heard this week that we should refer to as IOF soldiers. So, yeah, yes. So we're no longer going to say
Right.
IDF soldiers. We're not
Okay.
that,
IOF standing for Israel Occupy. Is that
or Israel
occupation?
Occupation Forces.
Right. Okay. There you go.
That's a new term that we'll be using. No longer
Okay.
IDF, they're not defending anything.
Right. Right.
And I've been saying IOF since then. And then we had a very strong submission from China. So China came.
Yes, I picked that up as well, and I was very pleasantly surprised. Carry on, Aisha. I just needed to add that I was quite taken aback by China's submission and their stance, and I thought, well, good on you guys, and that does bode well for the entire case, does it not?
It definitely does, because China has a strong military, and China came out and said in court that if Israel is not going to abide, if they're not going to come to the table, we need to provide military assistance to the Palestinians. And they were the first
Wow.
country. I mean, that was groundbreaking in court. I
Absolutely.
think everybody in court was both impressed and a little bit scared. But a very good step and a very practical step, in my opinion. What do we keep doing if Israel refuses to recognize now the highest court of the world? That's all legal avenues. Something has to happen to make them feel it, to make them feel the pressure from other states. So the armed resistance from China was a big thing. And I think it's not what anybody wants. So it's not the choice to have a war, to start a world war, or to hurt any more people. And as Dr. Riyad Mansour said on the first day of submissions, he doesn't want to see anybody else killed, not Palestinians, not Israelis. He wants human rights for everyone. But we're coming to a point with Israel where we are running out of options, and we can no longer stand back and just watch the Palestinian people suffer Ramadan after Ramadan, year after year. So China was saying to the court that basically, if you don't implement something quickly, and if the states don't put enough pressure on Israel to end the occupation, the only way forward, or the only option, is the armed resistance.
Okay, and we do know that China is a superpower in its own right. I don't think America was very pleased with China's stance regarding their submission. Anything else stood out for you at the hearings? And how has America, what did they have to say about all of this? We know they've been vetoing, the submissions, but anything different come out of the American delegation?
So basically, with the US, the UK, Namibia, and Fiji, so those are the 4 states that submitted that the court should not give an advisory opinion, which, as the other states are saying, is ludicrous at this point in time. One of the main precedents of international law is that if there's no good reason for a court not to give an opinion, or not to give a ruling, or not to give a binding provisional measure, then you do it, because a court is all about justice, and a court is all about serving justice as swiftly as possible. And what all of these countries have come forward and said is that it's not up to the court to give this advisory ruling, because it will the negotiations between Palestine and Israel will be affected. But as the Maldives so rightly said, that's a myth. There is no negotiations between Israel and Palestine. There's an occupying force. They are the occupied people. They are being annexed, and they are being exterminated. And how do you negotiate with your occupier? How do you negotiate with the occupier who's inflicting those international law, international human rights violations. So this entire argument was based on the fact from the US to Fiji that negotiations would be hampered. And what the other countries came forward and said very strongly is that there are no negotiations. There is absolutely no reason. Jurisdiction has been proven. The court has to give an advisory union opinion because that's what the court is here for. It's here for human rights. It's here for justice. And they didn't give very strong submissions. In fact, Fiji was quite embarrassing yesterday. The ambassador gave a press statement afterwards, and we went to interview him, and he refused to answer any questions. He just read from the same press statements. And one of the journalists that I was working with asked him, Israel does not want to negotiate, so what's the next step? And he refused to answer the question. So I don't even think that they believe what they're doing.
Okay, so Ayesha, to wrap up then, what do you see now playing out regarding the issue on Palestine? A lot of states have submitted very strong cases in support for the Palestinian people. The Palestinians themselves want to have negotiated talks with Israel. As you rightly said, they are saying we don't want not another life lost, be it Palestinian or Israeli life. And they are more than prepared to meet the occupiers halfway to come to a resolution. So on the one hand, it's the situation, the stance that Palestine is taken. On the other hand, the ruling from the ICJ, and we do know it's not going to happen overnight. When do we expect a ruling, and how do you see all of this playing out?
So actually, the ruling for the ICJ case, the report from Israel was due at the court yesterday. So we tried asking the court officials, and everybody was quite eager to know whether Israel had submitted the report. And they it's very hush-hush. They've said that the report has been submitted, but it's a private document, and it will be up to the court to decide whether it wants to give a public comment on that report. So we know that that's what's going on in terms of the ICJ case. And
but how fair is that? Shouldn't there be transparency? Because everybody else has been transparent. Everyone stated their cases. Why should they be allowed some measure of privacy in the matter?
I agree. So in terms of the rules of court, when a country responds, then the court gets to decide. For example, Israel has to tell the court now what measures they're going to put in place in terms of the provisional measures set down. So there could be like matters of national security in there, things like that. So the court has to first sit with the report, and then in the interest of justice, it will decide what they're going to actually disclose to us, and if they're going to give South Africa an opportunity to respond to that report. But the important thing is that genocide case is not over. We are still going to have the final decision by the court of whether this is genocide. So the case is still ongoing. So this report is just a part of that case. And it is frustrating. We all want to know what Israel is saying, but I don't think we should have high hopes, because their attitude towards this entire ICJ case is that they are the victims, and it's a smear campaign. And it makes you wonder if they've completely lost the plot in terms of international law and relations, because they are a member state to the Genocide Convention. And if they now say that the highest court of the world, I mean, even with South Africa, because South Africa brought the genocide case against Israel, we are now the legal wing of Hamas. So anybody who doesn't agree with Israel's policies or wants an end to the occupation, which is the whole world, as we can see from this case, is in favor of Hamas and in favor of so-called terrorism, etc. So I don't have high hopes in terms of Israel obliging willingly, but I think that if enough international pressure in the form of these sanctions that now Ireland has started, in the form of these military threats, in the form of all the European countries now they've started sending aid again, quite a few of them, like Belgium. I saw a video yesterday where there's aid falling down in Palestine it's being airdropped, but nobody knows where it's coming from. So I'm waiting to see what that's all about. But I think the African Union also spoke about another Nakba, and how we all know what the Nakba is, and we can't wait for another Nakba to come through. So there's a lot of international pressure, and I've been echoing the sentiment throughout the week that the court is where you put forward you submit your legal arguments, and where legal processes have to happen, but it's the people who make the real change. So we're hoping that every state member that came through and made their submissions in favor of Palestine will now take collective action.
Inshallah, Amin. And that's where we're going to leave it. I have no doubt in my mind that we will be talking again real soon regarding this matter. As always, Ayesha, an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You go and get yourself some very well-deserved rest until the next time, of course. Keep us in your dua. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Keep me in your du'as as well. It's always a
Amin.
pleasure talking to you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was attorney Ayesha Vahed, our legal reporter at The Hague. Of course, she's been giving us amazing updates regarding the ICJ case, and we will be continuing our discussions with her in the coming days, weeks, and months. So do look out for that. It is exactly 8:41 a.m. News and views on Salaamedia, and I think in a minute or two we are going to be talking with Dr. Safia Jacobs. So please stay with us.